The Sega Dreamcast was Sega's final hurrah with the console manufacturing before switching to just software development, making games for other systems. The Dreamcast aimed to reduce costs with the off-the-shelf components like the Hitachi SH4 CPU and the NEC Power VR2 GPU. It used the GD-ROM format to avoid DVD expenses and included a custom version of Windows CE on game disc for easy PC game ports. Sega Naomi Arcade System Board allowed for closed arcade conversions. Notably, the Sega Dreamcast was the first console to have a built-in modular modem for internet access and online gaming. But before we go further, I can see you. I can see that you're not subscribed. It will be lovely if you please subscribe to my channel. It helps me be able to make the videos that I can make, and it'll help me be able to be monetized. So please subscribe. Today, we'll take a look at 10 canceled Dreamcast games. This is only covering the surface of lost and canceled titles for the system. Without further ado, let's start. Panic World is a canceled puzzle game that was in development by Digital Eclipse, planned to be released on the Sega Dreamcast. Gameplay was similar to Tetris Attack, Puzzle Bobble, or even Magical Drop, with players trying to combine 4 gems of the same colors to make them vanish, while doing combos to send magical attacks to other players. Panic World was never officially announced by Digital Eclipse. However, a former developer discovered a prototype of the game and shared some photos and gameplay on Twitter. It appears that the team created an early demo before the project was canceled due to the failure of the Dreamcast. Not to be confused with War 64, 64 Wars, a canceled Nintendo 64 game. Wars is a canceled MMORPG that was in development around 1996 to 1999 by Shoei System and directed by Kensuke Mitsuru. Initially planned for the Sega Saturn and later moved to the Dreamcast, the team developed Wars as a pioneer of the next generation in online RPGs on consoles, allowing 5,000 players to be connected and play together. When the company showed the game at the Tokyo Game Show 1997, the game was playable with 16 players from 3 different booths: Shoei, Sega, and SIG. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Connected via telephone line. The game was polygon-based, set on a medieval-like world with the usual fantasy trope, magic, and swordplay, where players tried to beat an evil lord. The game had an innovative feature where players could get married to each other and have children. Just like every other online RPG, in Wars, players could level up their characters and collaborate with other players to defeat enemies. The behavior and choices of the player would affect the progress of the game, and the main storyline would change from moment to moment. Each player could get a different outcome. Shoei System invested 200 million yen, about 1.8 million, to develop their game and set up 100 servers for its online world. However, it became evident that the majority of the market was losing interest in the Sega Saturn. The company decided to shift the project to the Dreamcast. Unfortunately, this move did not yield positive results. By 1999, Shoei's system was already facing economic difficulties and unable to pay off their debts. They ultimately went bankrupt. This resulted in the cancellation of Wars and all of their other projects. Ringman is a canceled third-person platform shooter that was in development by Zono Inc. in late 1996, initially planned for the Sega Saturn and then moved to the Sega Dreamcast. This game was meant to be one of the first titles published by Sega of America for an unreleased version of the Dreamcast. The development team, including William Novak, previously worked with Ed Inzunta, I hope I pronounced this last name correctly, on Mr. Bones for the Sega Saturn. In late 1996, while the Dreamcast hardware was still unavailable, Zono collaborated with Sega of America producers and the team began working on a 3D effects version of the console, codenamed Black Belt, inspired by Quake from id Software. In Ringman, the worlds would feature curved surfaces, and the main character would have a body made of colorful rings, allowing it to move quickly and shoot down enemies. The team did quite a bit of concept art for the game and got as far as having a very simple prototype world with the protagonist moving around. Unfortunately, the project was canned in mid 1997 when Sega of Japan found out about Sega of America's plan to create another console and shut down the project. Flesh and Wire. Oh my goodness, the name of this game is just ridiculous. But anyway, Flesh and Wire was a canceled action adventure game by Running with Scissors, announced in 1999 and intended for the PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, and GameCube. Players would have to control an alien blob to explore the world and solve puzzles in an over-the-top shooter format. It would be also that same year that Ripcord Games' parent company Parasonic Interactive Media would announce their closure. Earlier that year, the senior management of Panasonic made a deal to acquire Ripcord Games and turn it into an independent company. Vince Desi then announced that Running with Scissors would continue developing Flesh and Wire on their own and stated that they'll support Ripcord's new team on the new original effort. Unfortunately, Ripcord Games decided to drop their support for the game, despite RWS reported in the December 1999 issue of Spin magazine that they sunk 1.5 million into the project and was planning to release it next year. No publisher was ever found to support the project, so they decided to cancel it and focus on other projects. Some of these will also be canceled as well. Shoujo R is a canceled Dreamcast game that was in development by Compile in 1999. Unfortunately, there's not too much information about this game, but we can speculate it would have been a space-themed RPG. Here's some concept art. Gunther Man Project was the original title for Toy Commander, a Dreamcast action game developed by No Cliche and published by Sega in North America on September 1999. Several magazines and online publications mentioned Gunther Man as one of the launching titles, along with Argatha, another canceled title for the Dreamcast, according to Future Games Net. It's unknown if the game was much different from the final version or not, because there are very limited details. The only known fact about this beta slash prototype is that Scoop magazine briefly talks about it. There's no screenshots of gameplay or any concept arts or early renderers of characters. Dragon's Crown is a 2D action game developed by Vanillaware with the assistance from Atlas for the PS Vita, PS3, and later PS4. Originally, the game was planned for the Sega Dreamcast in 1998. As stated by Vanillaware president George Kintani, the project was sadly canceled because he was unable to find a publisher willing to support the project. In 1999, Sega announced that two PC fantasy RPGs were heading their way to the Dreamcast. One was BioWare's Baldur's Gate, and the other one was Nextech's Dark Eyes. Sadly, both games got canceled and never made their way on the Dreamcast. Set in a fantasy world, Dark Eyes enabled hundreds, if not thousands, of players to interact and do battles via Dreamcast built in modem. An article that appeared on Player One issue 1999 suggested how 3,000 players could reside in the same universe, and that the game was also compatible with Zip Drive. It's unknown why the port was cancelled, but I can speculate the reason why. Because of its high demand for server costs, plus it would have been expensive for players to keep up with high internet bills for a console that was a failure and a MMORPG that was very obscure. The internet in the 90s was also very unstable, and having 300 or 3,000 players at once would have slowed down the game's performance. But that's just my speculation. Little Dream is a canceled RPG that was in development by Panther Software, the same team behind Space Griffin Remake in 1998/99 for the Dreamcast. Unfortunately, there's little to no information about this game. From what we can speculate from looking at the few screenshots that are available, the game resembles a high fantasy forbidden magical world or a cursed dream world, similar to games like American McGee's Alice or Little Big Adventure for MS-DOS, or Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon. So now we're down to my most favorite part of this entire entry list. If It Happened. If It Happened is a canceled survival horror game that was in development by Fujicom around 2001/2002, planned to be released on the Dreamcast. As reported by IGN, the game was officially announced in Japan in June 2001. It was mentioned in a few Japanese magazines such as Dorimanga, but soon it vanished with not much ever being shown. In 2021, the Dreamcast Junkyard found a trailer for If It Happened hidden as an unlockable video in another Fujicom game titled Bokumo no Tatsujin. The game's art style was going to be very similar to the likes of Clock Tower, Silent Hill, and Resident Evil, with the standard survival horror tropes of dark mansions, creepy hotels, and etc. There is no other details about the game's plot or characters, but we can assume that the game would have the player running away from possessed mannequins while trying to solve puzzles to escape.
随分長い間こうやって走ってるんですけどね、なんだかずっと同じところを走っている気がするんです。
今日からお世話になります。
ああ、よろしく。君の部屋に足元に気をつけたまえ。停電してる。ここだ。それじゃあとは頼んだよ。
ちょっと待ってください。
In closing, honestly, these games sound very interesting, and it's quite sad we didn't get to experience any of these great titles, as they probably would have improved the Dreamcast library. And the Dreamcast was such an amazing system with abilities that are still being used in modern gaming. The console was truly innovative and ahead of its time. Thank you if you made it to the end of the video, I gladly appreciate it, and if you have any suggestions, thoughts, or additional information about these games, feel free to share them in the comments section below. I love to hear your insights, and don't forget to like the video if you found it interesting, and consider subscribing for more content like this. And thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.